Hello Africa, a very good evening and a warm welcome to Bottomline Africa. My name is Yusuf Ibrahim. It is Wednesday, the 2nd day of May 2018, and we have the very latest from Kenya, the region, as well as across the continent. My name is Yusuf Ibrahim. Let me take you straight to our headlines tonight. President Uhuru makes his first State of the Nation address since the contested 2017 election. At least 11 people killed and scores others injured in Libya's capital attack. ICC prosecutor Fatou Bensouda in DRC following spats of violence. Good evening once again. The program begins right now. And this morning, President Uhuru Kenyatta made his annual State of the Nation address to Parliament buildings right in the capital, Nairobi, and by extension to the whole country. He touched on various issues, including the importance of unity, the need to fight corruption, as well as highlighting on the Big Four agenda right here in Kenya. Let's listen into some of his speech there.
If there is anything I said last year that hurt or wounded you, if I damage the unity of the country in any way, I ask you to forgive me and to join me in repairing that harm. Never again should a Kenyan life be lost for politics' sake. Let every leader in the country reach out to our sons and daughters and remind them that they have it in them to forge a Kenya that speaks gently, that criticizes constructively, and that embraces and respects dissent and competition as healthy and civilized ways of collaboration.
From Kenya, let me take you to the most populous country in Africa, and that is Nigeria. Nigeria's Federal Ministry of Health has directed the National Agency for Food and Drug Administration and Control to immediately cease the importation of codeine. The ban is specifically of codeine as an active pharmaceutical ingredient for cough preparations. Now, the directive is meant to curb an addiction crisis exposed by the BBC in a recent undercover film that was also aired right here on KTN News.
See this funny guy that I couldn't find just now. His number was not going through. He just called me back now. I don't know where he has gone to. Okay, no, I'm not ready yet. At least the product I know if I have $1 million,
From Nigeria, let me take you up north, that is the northern part of this continent, and to be specific, Libya, where at least 11 people have been killed and a building set on fire at the head offices of Libya's Electoral Commission in Tripoli after a group of militants and suicide bombers stormed the offices. According to the Electoral Commission spokesman Khalid Omar, security forces engaged in a gun battle with the assailants as they tried to regain control of the offices. There was no immediate claim of responsibility for the attack, but it is alleged to aim at derailing efforts to organize elections in Libya by the end of this year. The Commission recently registered nearly 1 million new voters across Libya, though no date has been set for polls. Elections in 2014 were disputed, resulting in rival governments backed by competing military alliances in Tripoli and the east. Libya has been in a state of turmoil since 2011. Civil war resulted in the overthrow of long-standing ruler Muammar Gaddafi by rebel fighters backed by NATO airstrikes. Let me take you back to Nigeria. And a place of worship became a place of terror as dozens of people were killed Tuesday in 2 bomb blasts in a mosque in northeast Nigeria. Fahmu Muhammad tells us more.
It was an eerie day in the town of Mumbi in Adamawa State as twin suicide bombs ghastly struck a mosque during afternoon prayers yesterday. At least 24 people were killed. A representative for Adamawa State Police noted the bombers were positioned in different locations around the mosque. The first bomber went into the mosque while they were praying and detonated his explosives, killing 4 people, witnesses recall. As worshippers started to flee, the second bomber, who stood a few meters away, also detonated his device, killing another 20 people. This desecration of a place of worship by criminals is tragic and condemnable. Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari's office official Twitter account stated in a series of tweets following the attack. Vice President Osinbajo was working with the emergency services to make sure victims were cared for. The government has ordered security services to bolster their numbers in Mumbai and other places, particularly around markets and places of worship. This is the second bombing this week after suicide bombers killed 4 people in Maiduguri, Borno State, a day prior. This comes one day after Nigerian President Buhari and President Donald Trump met in Washington discussing trade and internal security challenges, including Boko Haram in the country.
Whether that
Fahma Mohammed, KTN News.
president was true or not.
Now, at least 15 people were killed and more than 50 others wounded in a church attack in Central African Republic's capital of Bangui. Thousands of protesters carried the body of a priest killed in the attack by an unidentified gunman during a morning mass. Now, according to witnesses, Christians who were celebrating St. Joseph Day were trapped in the church and had to break down a wall to free them. 9 dead bodies were taken to Bangui's community hospital, while aid agency Doctors Without Borders said 6 people had died and 60 others were wounded at other hospitals where it operates. Now, 2 of the victims brought to the community hospital said Muslims had attacked them. Last month, 21 civilians were killed in a Muslim district in the majority Christian city during gun battles between police and armed criminal gangs. Central African Republic descended into turmoil after Muslim Seleka rebels ousted President Francois Bozize in 2013, provoking retaliation killings by anti-militias drawn largely from Christian communities. Now, Burundi has launched the official campaign for a referendum on constitutional change that could enable President Pierre Nkurunziza to stay in power for another 16 years. Yes, you heard me right. Now, 20 parties, most of them aligned with the ruling party, have been authorized to campaign for the May 17th plebiscite in the politically tense Central African nation. The vote is taking place in a tightly condition, and parties which advise electors to abstain rather than cast a yes or no ballot risk up to 3 years in jail. Burundi's exiled opposition gathered in an alliance calling for a boycott of the referendum, which it describes as the quote-unquote death knell to a 2000 agreement that helped end a bloody civil war. In 2015, Burundi was plunged into a deep political crisis when Nkurunziza ran for a 3rd term in office. At least 1,200 people were killed and 400,000 others fled the country. Elsewhere in Comoro, a constitutional referendum will be held on July 30th on presidential term limits that could result in the next vote behind held 2 years ahead of schedule. Now, the move could allow President Azali Assoumani, who won the last elections in 2016, to run the country for 2 fresh 5 years instead of the 1 5-term allowed in the constitution. The next vote is scheduled for 2021. The referendum, if passed, will do away with a constitution meant to rotate power every 5 years between the archipelago islands. Now, Chad's parliament has overwhelmingly approved a new constitution that expands President Idriss Déby's powers and could allow him to stay in office until 2033. Now, in a vote boycotted by most opposition lawmakers, the new constitution to limit is scrapped in a 2005 referendum, but it will not be applied retroactively, meaning Déby could serve 2 terms after the next election in 2021. The constitution now heads to Déby for his signature. Déby's opponents say that the constitution, which eliminates the post of prime minister and creates a fully presidential system, is aimed at installing a de facto monarchy in Chad. Now, a Gabon court has ordered Prime Minister Emmanuel to resign and the lower house of parliament dissolved after legislative elections scheduled for the weekend were delayed. The court ruled that the Prime Minister and the National Assembly were no longer legitimate because the government failed to hold the election on time. The court ordered President Ali Bongo to name an interim Prime Minister until elections could be organized. A multi-committee appointed an electoral commission last Friday after repeated delays to organize the vote, but no new election date has yet been set. The upper house of parliament, the Senate, will remain in place under the court's order. Bongo appointed Emmanuel minister after a narrow victory in a 2016 election that international observers said was marred by irregularities and that sparked a brief spasm of violence there. Now, the International Criminal Court's chief prosecutor, Fatou Bensouda, has arrived in Kinshasa to begin probe into allegations of deadly violence. Bensouda is scheduled to meet with government officials and judicial institutions and address a press conference tomorrow. In January, a European Parliament resolution urged the ICC and the United Nations to investigate allegations of crimes against humanity in the Kasai region. A total of 16 people have been killed since December last year in the repression of 3 marches by a collective of the Catholic Church in the country. Elections are scheduled for December 23rd in the DRC for the departure of President Kabila, who is still in power despite his second and final term ending on 20th December 2016. Now, tens of thousands of supporters of Armenia's protest leader, Nikol Pashinyan, have responded to his call for civil disobedience, blocking key roads and government buildings. He has led weeks of anti-protest that forced Armenia's president, Saz Sargsyan, to resign after 10 years in power. Pashinyan called for a general strike after ruling party MPs refused to back him as interim prime minister. Protests broke out across the capital, Yerevan, and other main cities. Pashinyan came to prominence in 1995 when he began writing about government corruption. He founded a newspaper 3 years later. In 2012, he was first elected to Armenia's parliament. He argues that only he can steer Armenia to free and fair elections. And that story from Armenia takes us over to our images of the day, and here are our images of the day. Take a look.
What does it mean?
Greek god. Zeus is a god.
Love designing things that have a story and a history to them, because I find designs like that they withstand time. It's not a trend. And I'm not trying to do trendy fashion. I'm trying to do items that people can invest in, and 5 years from now they can still take out and wear them. For me to be able to take something of mine, from my people, from my home, and to be able to wear that with pride and to actually share it with other people as well, it's something that's exciting. It's something that, you know, it makes me want to continue. And more than anything, having started the Kubo collection, it's also piqued an interest in me to learn more about my own history and more about where the Basotho people come from, and how Mushweshwe put all those clans together. And there's so many stories still to be unpacked, still to be told. And I'm hoping to be able to share those stories through my garments and my creations.
I have to design the blankets that is written the Basotho different things so that I can show them that Basotho is the people who are using the blankets always. Most of our children, they don't know what does the blanket mean. So we have to go back to the community and teach them about our culture and what does the blanket mean.
The inspiration came because I saw some fashion designers here in Lesotho dealing with jackets, making jackets out of Basotho blankets, which are the Santa Marina blankets. So I decided to bring something cool that everybody can wear.
Well, and that takes us to a very short break, but when we come back, we still have a lot lined up for you. But first, here is Destination Africa.